everybody. It's Dr. Tom Talks Careers and College. Today, this is very exciting. We talk about jobs a lot and strategies and careers, and these are all things that many of us are familiar with. But Mike, hi, Mike, how are you?
Good, Dr. Tom. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, Mike, you are a recruiter. So who knows better about these topics than you, right? I would say most of them.
Yeah, I like to speak on the topics I know at least.
Yeah, these are good ones. So, in talking to you earlier, we talked about the few topics or bullet points that we're going to hit in a short time. I don't want to hold you up too long, but these are all common things, right, that we all go through, and I really just want your take on them, and maybe you can help a few people out, maybe even me, in this job search. So we'll just title this as job search and strategies. So let's go. Here we go. Mike, often we hear when we're getting interviewed by an employer, a potential employer, one of the questions we dread, tell me about yourself.
Yeah.
That is a wide open question. Where do you start? Go ahead.
Yeah, that's hard. And I don't like that question. I always preface that when I tell people, and there's a few reasons I don't like it. I get why it gets asked. The reason companies ask it is they think this is a easy sort of softball question. Let's get a flow conversation happening. But it creates confusion. And people don't know if they're talking about personally or professionally or how long to talk or anything along that way. Sometimes it makes you feel like they've never read your resume and they're just asking you to sort of do this and they're showing up on the spot, and it makes people uncomfortable. So the problem is it will always be asked. So it's easy to say, like, let's not ask it, but people are going to ask it. So my approach and what I kind of tell people is this is a professional question. This is almost never a personal question. If it is, they will tell me about something outside of work, and that's its own bag of snakes to get into. But the best thing you can do for any interview is prepare like 3 to 4 bullet points of yourself, your career highlights, your elevator pitch, essentially. And I've shown people on my TikTok page, like how I'll split screen my camera on one side and like these bullet points I want to talk about on the other. Not a full script to read, but just to make sure you don't miss it. And consider just what are the 3 highlights you want them to know. This is not a resume walkthrough. If they want to ask you questions about your resume, they can ask you questions about their resume. If you're concerned about giving too little information, they will ask you for more information. Shorter is always going to be better in this situation. So I say, think of 3 to 4 bullet points that are just your sales pitch. I am someone who has done X in my career. I've been doing Y for 15 years. I'm really excited about when I get to do this at work. And I'm really excited about the opportunity to take a step into whatever this kind of role might be. And something like that is just a very quick, like, here's who I am professionally. And when you lead with those couple of bullet points, you also can kind of guide the conversation. Right now you said, here's what I want to talk about. Ask me more about this. It's enough that if you say, I'm someone who completed a project where we grew our sales by 200% because of this change that I put in place to the process. They're going to say, that's great. Tell me about it. And then you can really dig into that and you're selling yourself very early. So that's generally the approach I take to that. They're not looking for your hobbies. They're not looking for a full resume recap, anything like that. And like I said, if they are, let them ask for that and don't just take a lot of time telling them the stuff they weren't asking about anyway.
I like how you said that the candidate can set the tone, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a possibility that the candidate gets too wordy? They may be off track, maybe due to nervousness, or maybe to derail the conversation, maybe?
Yeah, it's incredibly common. And one of the easiest, like, simple pieces of advice I give a lot, and I've heard a lot of people say this, I'm certainly not going to claim this quote, but it's as simple as just answer the question and stop talking. Yeah. I think because of nerves, we tend to ramble. We think we can get to the perfect answer if we keep going, and they're not responding, right? They're just kind of nodding along or taking notes, and we're waiting for that kind of cue for them that we've said what they want us to what they wanted to hear. Don't worry about that. Answer your question. Answer the question you got to ask. Stop talking, and then let them dig in and ask more. It's okay if there's 20 seconds of silence before they get there.
Right. Here's one that I can't stand.
Mm-hmm.
What is your greatest weakness?
Yeah.
Let me just interject real quick. So I haven't been in this position in a while to look for a job. But
Mhm.
but before, I would say, not really having the proper coaching. I don't have any weaknesses. Does somebody want to say that? Because you
No.
because actually, I think it's a natural instinct to say, I don't have any weaknesses, right?
Yeah. It's another silly question. So many of these silly questions, if I'm being honest, just come from the fact that these questions have just always existed, and very few people are really ever like trained and have a good interview process to kind of like understand why we're asking things and what they mean. So this is something that you got asked the first part-time job you ever interviewed for, and then the next first full-time job, and then one day you became a hiring manager and you started asking it to people, and it just goes. So when managers are asking that question, essentially, and if we're giving them the most benefit of the doubt, what they are hoping to find here is some self-awareness from you and some high emotional intelligence. So the best way to phrase this question is simple when you get it. You take a weakness of yours that is not detrimental to the job. It can't be if you're interviewing for a software engineer, I don't know how to write code, right? That's not the weakness you want to bring up right now. It has to be something not detrimental to the job, that you understand how it affects you in a day-to-day, and you are taking steps to work on. It's nothing you've cured, but it's just the awareness of it. For myself, and I use this example all the time when I'm asked my greatest weakness, I will point out that I move very quickly. I started in hiring as a agency recruiter, where in third-party agency world, things move very fast. Time is money. You're working on commission. You don't have time sometimes to slow down. And as I moved into more internal roles and helping companies sort of build up their teams, I struggled to lose a lot of that, to be able to slow down. So I'm someone who thinks my top priority often is everyone's top priority. And I need to do a better job of understanding that continuing to pester someone isn't going to get things done quicker, and that I should be setting up times where we specifically are going to meet to talk about the things I need to meet about, setting up whether it's regular meetings or emails or Slacks or whatever we're doing, that I can understand here's when the answer will come, and understand that other people have other priorities and I'm on the list. So that's something that I go to, because, right, it doesn't ruin my job, it doesn't make me bad at the job, but it is something that I demonstrate this is my weakness, and it's something that they're also going to know coming in. Here's the thing we're going to work with this person on if we do hire them. So that's generally what you want to aim for. I know there's a lot of jokes, right? If you go into comment sections when I post about this, you'll see the same jokes come every time about what the answer is, but like, it's going to be asked, and that is the best way to phrase it. And there's common ones people use. People will always go to like, I don't say no to things. That's fine. Just make it personal to you.
Yeah. No, I like it. Is there any point though when a candidate is telling the employer or answering that question, at that point, because the weakness word it could be have a negative,
Sure.
presence, but is that candidate reading that employer? Like, what are they thinking, right? Because as you're telling your weakness, you're trying to gauge what their interpretation of you, what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, potentially, but I guess this comes down to something I was trying to have them keep in mind is you can only control so much. You will dive into a rabbit hole trying to figure out what the person you're interviewing with is thinking and talking about. There are people who you can read their face and their reactions to everything, and there are people you can't. And I have met with so many candidates who are just like, this hiring manager hated me. They weren't responding. They weren't laughing at my jokes. They weren't doing this or that. And not everybody does. Some people are just very stoic. Some people are very straightforward. Some people are too loose. Some people make you think it's going great because they're just laid back and having a fun time with you, but they're still taking notes about you that make you not get the job and you don't get it. So don't worry about it. Give your answers and don't worry about what you think they're thinking about. It's just going to send you in this loop in your head you can't get out of.
Yeah, I like it. All right, next. Why do you want to work here?
To pay my bills. That's just, yeah. I mean, ultimately, that's everyone's answer, and we know it. And this is another one where I made this video, and it has all these views, and it has like several thousand comments, and at least half of them are because I like to pay my bills, because I like to eat, and I get it. This is another one that I'm very clear when I talk about. I never asked this question. This question provides no value in the real world, because we know the answer. So the best advice
hear them talk and answer that though, just for giggles?
Yeah, so there's like a couple reasons again this gets asked. One, because it's just one of those traditional questions where people say it. Two, are they trying to figure out if you've done any research into the company? Yes. But in reality, it is still their job to make you want to work there. And we have to keep that in mind. Yes, we're competing for a job. Yes, we need to work. We can't go in there and make it only their job. Like we have to bring value as well. But the best answer I can give to this, and I talk about this a lot, is twofold. One, still making it clear that this is not your dream job. You're not here to accept an offer yet. I like to start that answer with, I've looked into the company a little bit, and I'm really excited to learn more about it from you and the team and get a feel for what's really great about working here. That puts it on them, right? You still have to show me why I want to work here. And then the other part of that is I say, find one thing. You don't have to do a ton of research. You don't have to know everything about this company, but somewhere in this job description or on their webpage is something that appeals to you in some way, something that you would like, whether they talk about a certain technology they work in, or whether they talk about they give you a $5,000 education stipend every year to go do learning. They're telling you some perks on their website in some way, beyond just like unlimited PTO. It wouldn't necessarily lead with that or something like that. But you give that twofold answer of, I'm really excited to learn more about this company from you and everyone else I meet with and get a real feel for what the best parts of working here would be. But I did notice when I was reading through the job description that you have just implemented this new software. It's a software I've always been very excited about and I've wanted to kind of learn and work in as well. So when I saw the opportunity to come in here and be part of that implementation, it excited me, and that's what got us here. Just like a simple thing. You don't have to say stuff. They don't have to be your dream job. They don't have to be all those things. Just something that demonstrates like I didn't accidentally fall into this interview, but also I need more from you.
Yeah. So what my takeaway is at least do some research, right? Come with something to answer that question with.
Yeah, I mean, you have to. I'm not on the side, and I say this all the time. I don't need you to know the ins and outs of my product. I don't need you to convince me that this is your dream job. I don't need you to come and recite like the Wikipedia article for my page and tell me all about the company. But I do want to know that because we've selected you for an interview, you've put some time in. And I think that's fair. I get it. You're applying for jobs. You didn't just like seek out my company, apply for this one. You're not going anywhere else. And any hiring manager or interviewer with any kind of, intelligence going on knows that's the case. But now we're here. We picked your resume. We asked you to interview. We're showing some interest here at this point. Can you show a little bit of interest in us as well? I think it's just like a fair level to start an interview at.
Definitely fair. Definitely fair. All right, next. What about the gaps, if any, that are the gaps in employment for a candidate? How do you fill those?
Gaps are tough, and it depends on the time and where you are, I guess. Right now, when I was currently I'm in between roles, but when I was working at my last company earlier this spring, if I came across someone who was like working and didn't have a gap over the last few years, I was actually surprised. It's becoming so commonplace, and we do need to understand that since March 2020, through COVID, through the Great Resignation, through everyone making all the money they wanted, through these mass layoffs happening across the board for almost a year now, people have been through some things, and resumes are showing it, and it's just kind of a little bit normal now. So don't overthink all these gaps. It is okay that you were just laid off, that a role didn't work out. Like, it's common. Now, if we're talking year plus gaps or gaps where you took a career break or something along that line, you're going to hear lots of different advice here. There's no perfect way here. But one thing I advise people is simply just have your last role and then just put career break with the dates. If you want to give some reason, you can. You do not have to. If you want to say raising children or medical, or caring for family members, which are the common ones of why people take long breaks, you can put it on there. And ultimately what I tell people is a long gap like that may hurt you somewhere, but that's also not where you want to go back. Stay-at-home moms are the perfect example of this, where if you are going to interview with a company that sees that you spent the last 3 years as a stay-at-home mom and thinks you weren't putting in any work, you must be lazy, you're not a hard worker, you were spending the last 3 years at home on the couch just watching TV, like while your kids grew up. Like, imagine what working for that boss is going to be like. Imagine what happens the first time you have an issue at home with your kids and need to leave early or whatever it might be. The gap exists. You can't just avoid it. So you call it out on the basic level, and you find the people who are willing to not care as much. The people who care about it are just not going to be the best way to get back to work right now anyway.
Yeah. And like you said, you can only do so much, right? You got to be straight with these folks. So how do employers know whether there was a gap or not? Like if you didn't list the gap at all and you kind of merge the dates and the history together somehow, where there's no overlapping, how do employers know whether that's true or not? Or don't they?
So the way they would know is if they run a background check on you. This is people ask about this a lot. I just lie. I just make up a company. I do this. It can work, right? You can lie and be successful in life. I'm not here to say that lying you'll get caught every time. We all know that. But you are running a big risk because part of your background check process is a third-party company often calling and verifying the dates of your employment somewhere. They don't verify how well you did, but they verify you worked there. And little discrepancies usually will be overlooked if you're off by a month or two because you didn't remember your exact dates and things like that. But if they can't verify that you were there, it's going to cost you your offer. It's going to have wasted a whole lot of your time. And most companies do these verifications. They just do. So it's nothing that you can count on not happening. So it's just not a great way to go ultimately.
Does that include education as well for the background check?
Usually. So background check is typically a criminal, an education, and a work background check. In some industries, credit check as well, if it's like necessary for the role, but that's a little less common. But yeah, those will be verified. And it's done by a third-party company. So it's done by someone who doesn't care about your excuse or doesn't care about kind of how well you did at school. They're not calling to like ask about you. They're just calling to verify the information you're supplying is true, and then reporting back to the company if the things came back as true or not.
All right, let's talk salary. Is there a right time or no time to talk about salary when looking for a job?
Day one of the interview. It's that simple. There's a lot of back and forth information here, and I want to be clear with this and lots of things I say. Not everything I say is 100% right all the time. But what I often say to people is if you want to make money in your career, if you want to be comfortable, if you want to be paid, you need to be comfortable talking about money. Avoiding the situation does not work out for you. There is a lot of advice that people will tell you something like, just say to them if they talk about money, I just want to learn more about this job, and I'm sure if you think I'm great, you'll offer me a salary that's at the top of your range, and we'll kind of get there. And you're just asking to get an offer you don't want after going through a lot of interviews by doing that. People do need to understand that it is unfortunately true that companies have access to a lot more data than you do. They pay a lot of money for a lot of market research that can exist. What people have is self-reported data on things like Glassdoor and Salary.com and web pages like that you can't fully rely on. So when you go in and you try to sound like you're an expert on this, it doesn't work. When you say, well, I've done a lot of research and I know what this is and what this value is and this value is, a good hiring manager recruiter knows that like you don't really have that much data here. It's not about a battle. It's not about a battle of data. The best way to be successful at salary is an open and friendly conversation. If they ask you what you're looking to make in this role, you're welcome to say, is there a salary range in place? And in reality, you should both be giving this answer. In a perfect world, both sides are being honest here. But if you need to make $80,000, that's just what you need in your life for this role. You need to say that. You need to say, based on where I am and what I've been looking for, I'm looking somewhere I'm looking for a minimum of $80,000 for this role. And the company may say, great, that's in our range and we're good, and say more. But they may say,
look how much nonsense you eliminate all the nonsense, right?
Yeah, a lot of it, hopefully.
Well, hopefully, but
yeah.
if you're not upfront in the beginning and 1, 2, 3 interviews later, they come back at 50,
Mm-hmm.
right? Do you think though, people who don't talk about salary, is that a reflection of maybe they're desperate or they really need the job? Like I don't know why time is wasted.
I think it's an uncomfortable situation for many people. I
Yeah.
think that a lot of people are uncomfortable in interviews. They're especially uncomfortable talking about money. They're afraid of costing themselves a job. They're afraid of all these things. And I do get it. But ultimately, like you said, if this company is going to pay 50 max and that's their money for this role, and you need 80, you might as well figure that out in step one. A lot of people say, like, well, do I run a risk of costing myself the job by saying that? Like, potentially, but you're also not going to take the job at 50 after you go through all those interviews.
Right.
So are you costing the job or are you just saving time in those situations?
All right. So what about, let me just take my thing down here. What about contacting the employer directly for a job opening versus going through an Indeed? What the backdoor way, I guess you would say.
Yeah.
Is that an option?
If you do not have a direct referral into the company, direct referral means somebody you know who will vouch for you, a real connection, apply to the job first. No matter what, apply to the job first. I say this all the time. I have a coffee mug that says apply to the job. It's not showing up. That's fine, but it says apply to the job over and over again on it. Apply to the job. This is the most important advice I can say to people. Because here's what happens. You get told, don't apply to the job, message the recruiter, message the hiring manager. Cool. Okay. I've shown this in live time for jobs I've been working on. I open up a job and within a day, I have 1,000 applications in this market. This market is tough. I also have 500 to 600 emails about the job. So if you haven't applied, you're only in this pile of 500 emails. I'm not going to open them all and read them all and reply to them. I'm just not. It's not feasible.
Right.
That's not ghosting you. It's important to say this, right? These are cold outreach emails. This isn't me owing anyone the responses to these. If you did not apply, you're also not in the system. So now I haven't read your email, and there's a 0% chance I'm going to find your resume and get you hired into this job. You need to apply. If you want to reach out after, you can go for it. A lot of people recommend doing it. Is fine. There are people who have gotten hired doing it. There are a lot of recruiters who have stories of hiring people whose an outreach worked. But you need to understand the odds. You need to understand how many of those emails are coming and not just expect that because you sent it, it's going to work. You still need to be in the system as like the ultimate plan first.
Yeah, you got to be in it to win it. How does a recruiter know? Like, what's the system on the back end when you have 100 people applying for the same job? Like, what database, what information can you see or look at or filter through? Is there?
Yeah, so every ATS, an applicant tracking system, which there's a ton of misconceptions about them in general, but every ATS is a little bit different. But ultimately what happens is the resumes come in and it's essentially a digital filing cabinet, right? It's, I see the job, I see how many applications are there, and I can start to open up and review the resumes and kind of go through them. And then from there, I can hit like a button to move you into an interview stage. I can reject you. I just sort of move you to different categories from there. But what I see is just everyone who's applied. I see all of their profiles and their information. Not your EEOC answers. Very important to understand. I do not see those when you apply. So on an application, you always see the Equal Employment Opportunity Council questions, where they ask your gender and your ethnicity and questions like that. Those are put in an anonymous report. At most companies, those are put in an anonymous report that is just sent into the government in terms of kind of making sure fair hiring practices. So I get a lot of questions about this. I don't see those, but I see your resume, I see your information, I see everything sort of the top field, and I just start filtering through them.
What about like zip codes? Can you filter through zip codes?
Potentially, yeah. I mean, I could search through a zip code or sort it that way. If this was like a mandatory role to be in like local, I could put in a bunch of zip codes, I suppose, but I don't know if I've ever like sorted by zip code.
Yeah, I'm just curious. I'm thinking like somebody who applies, it's an hour and a half away. Well, I don't know. That's kind of a long commute, right? What about cover letters? Should they be included?
I don't know. I don't know how to answer that question. I get this question so often, and here's the ultimate thing. 9 out of 10 recruiters are going to tell you they don't like cover letters. They don't like to read them. There's too many. If you make everyone send a cover letter, right? If we're already saying looking at 1,000 resumes is hard, imagine if I also have to read 1,000 cover letters along with them. It's a lot of extra time. Most good recruiters can look at your resume and make the decisions they need. Now, there are situations where cover letters can help. If you're making a career transition, if there's something you really do want to explain. I do know of people who have gotten interviews because their cover letters sold themselves really well. So it's a tough answer because what I wish I could say is, no, you don't need a cover letter. Don't send it. Nobody's reading it. But some people are reading them and some people do care. So, you know, if you think if you think it's worth the time to put one together and do it, go for it. In most cases, most people don't send them though.
Okay. So in a resume, we talk about qualitative and quantitative. Is it better to be, I know it varies by position, but qualitative, which lets you be a little more fluffy, I guess, with your wording, quantitative, right, for those out there watching. Hard numbers, hard facts, direct to the point, which is better, which is worse? Is there any rhyme or reason to that?
So a little bit of both. I think a common issue people make on their resume is they just sort of repeat their job description and their job duties. Your resume is a marketing tool demonstrating your accomplishments at this job. So people will talk about numbers and qualitative results a lot, and those can be great, but not everybody has actual numbers to what they do. So I like to focus on just the word result. So I say every good bullet point should have an action word, what you did, the resources you use, and resources can be technology, people, they can be a lack of resource, they can be whatever the situation was, and the result of that. Because sometimes it is an easy number, right? Sometimes you increase sales by 20%, and that's just a hard number you can put on a resume. But sometimes you accomplished it on time. Sometimes you made sure that like it was done in the way that the customer wanted. Sometimes you hit your team goal and there's not like a set number to it. So it's not always going to be a set number, but the key is demonstrating what you did, a strong action word. I built, I managed, I implemented, I led. And I know everyone doesn't lead or do those things, but rather than sort of a weak start of was part of a team doing this, just tell me the thing you did. Give me the word you did, the verb you did, how you did it, and what the end result was. And when you list a bunch of those on your resume, some with numbers, some without numbers, because that's just how it works, that is you telling me what you accomplished at this job. And that is what stands out compared to just the bullet points of what the job was.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think a lot of times people are too wordy just to fill in that sheet of paper. What's ARR? You mentioned in the resume. What is that about? Sorry, Mike, we had a little glitch there. So you talk about ARR in your resume. What is that all?
So ARR is action, resources, and results. The actual what you did, not I was a part of a team that did this, but just I did this. I used these resources, and resources can be a technology, a system, people. It can be a lack of resources. Did it without this. And the results of it, which sometimes are quantifiable, right? Sometimes the result is we increased sales by 20%. Sometimes the result is we finished this before deadline, or we did what the customer, the client wanted. So it doesn't always have to be stuck in a number. The key is just that showing me your accomplishment at the job versus just telling me what the job was.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. What about checking your spam folder?
Yeah, this is such a simple tip I give people all the time. It's just like, because so many emails come from companies through their applicant tracking system, it often gets flagged as like a promotion or a spam. And like 2 times a week, I post a video, it's just like a reminder to go check your spam folder. And every time several people show up in the comments, just like, oh, I had an interview request in here. You need to check it every day because you'll get an interview request. And if you only check your spam folder once every 2 weeks, it'll be too late when you kind of find that email. It takes a minute to open up the spam folder and your promotions tab on Gmail. Just check them. It's not always going to be something in there, but you will miss stuff if you never look in that folder.
Your big offer could be sitting there waiting, right?
Yeah, and it's often just like a first interview. It's often like that first full screen because that email is not in your box yet. It's not approved anywhere. And it just shows up and it comes through as spam because it has a bunch of links. Like it's like click this link to schedule your interview. And sure. Google is like, oh, this is spam. So you need to go check for those.
Sure. Okay, well, we're a little bit behind. I appreciate you hanging in there. Just a few more. Job boards, right? I don't even want to name any, but the
Yeah.
common job boards. How effective are they, just in general? Is there anything we can shed some light on with that? Any suggestions?
Yeah, I mean, they're effective because it's where everything is. I think the real problem here is people wish there was like a secret job board everybody doesn't know about, and there really isn't. And you'll see a ton of people who are like, instead of LinkedIn, go look at this site, go look at this site, go look at this site. And you can, there's a lot in there, but almost every time it filters into the big job boards. They're all showing up the same places. Most companies are putting their jobs in the places they know that most people are. There are websites aimed specifically at like startup companies and things like that, but even then it still winds up filtering its way over for the most part. But I mean, check everything, I guess, if you want, but like you're finding most of the stuff when you're looking at the big places. There's nothing secret going on outside of there.
Yeah. Okay. Last question, I promise.
Okay.
So let's talk about networking, how we do it now virtually. What are some strategies, some tips of just connecting with people?
Yeah. I mean, so a big issue with networking is people are using networking too much right now to mean like finding a job. And they're considering networking to do what we talked about earlier, right? To sort of message a recruiter somewhere. Like, I'm networking, I'm connecting with people who work at this company. Like, you're reaching out to strangers and you're trying to take something. That's what you're doing there.
Yeah.
Networking is not taking, it is giving and taking at the same time. Networking is building connections with people who are people and share the same genuine kind of interest and things around a career at a minimum that you do. And you happen to just have been connected because work exists. So the idea of networking is having those people who you can talk to about things. And it's a long-term game. So when you're early in your career, it is tough, right? But it's a matter of just starting. I recently posted a video where I showed that I've been bad at networking my whole career. I spent most of my career viewing peers as my competition. It came from sort of this like agency start of mine where I just like thought everyone was my competition to make commission. And it hurt me the further I got into my career. I never felt like I had a great network of people in my industry. Not just hurt me in terms of finding a job, but just like, as the more you go into this, you want to talk to more like-minded people who are going through things and have different views and see things. And I don't have that. And so with LinkedIn now, it is very easy to, the biggest tip I give people, especially if you are an introvert and you don't like doing this stuff, follow a few top voices in your industry. LinkedIn now has top voices. It's the term that they use instead of influencers. And there's top voices in the industry who have hundreds of thousands of followers, and they post once or twice a day with general topics in like your industry. And when they post, they get hundreds of comments on every post. Start being a part of that. Reply to other people's comments. It's not trying to make friends with the influencers. It's not trying to become an influencer, right? But everyone in those comments is in the same boat you're in. So start replying to them, start giving your input, start showing like the value you have in this conversation. And I started doing it and I saw instant results. You see your views go up. You see your interactivity on LinkedIn go up. You start getting connection requests from people just like, hey, this was a great conversation. Like, we'd love to stay connected. And this is how it starts. Then you start sharing some news stories and articles and whatever else, and people have their thoughts on them. And like, that's building a real connection. And that's when in a year down the road, maybe you're looking for a job and you see this company is hiring and you and this person have had random comments back and forth with each other over the time. You have a general kind of acquaintance with each other. Then it's something to say like, hey, I noticed your company is hiring. I'm really interested in it. Like, I would love to chat about it a little bit. That's going to work a lot better than just sending random connection requests and messages to strangers and considering that networking. So it's a long-term game. We have to understand that. But it's used too frequently to talk in the short term. People like, get a job through networking. And people are like, oh, okay. So I'll just start asking people for a job. And like, what they mean is have an established network, get a job through it. And most people don't have that. So that's why it's sort of general, not great advice when they say get a job through networking to begin with. You have to take the time to invest and build that network.
And I think there's a strategy to that, because I've seen people who drum up a conversation, whether in person or online, and they don't have the tools or the conditioning. What I mean by that is they go right for what's in it for them.
Yeah.
Hey, Mike, yeah, great. Yada, yada, yada. Are you hiring?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You
right?
have to stop trying to take from
Take.
networking. There has to be a give and take. And the give can be simply your opinion, your value to the conversation, your thoughts. But that's why networking when you need a job and just starting to network isn't really networking. That's just seeing who you can find to help you in as short of a time as possible. And that's not what networking means. And that's how too many people think of it and why they hate doing it.
Right, right. All right, let me just make sure I didn't miss anything. This is all good stuff. One last thing, I said that before, but I promise. How does one handle the layoff process? I know that's a wide open question.
Yeah.
What are things that, right? Don't burn bridges. I know that's one of them. Leave gracefully. I don't know, but what are some of the best practices for that?
So the best advice I can give to laid off people, and to set a precedent here, I was laid off in November from a job I loved. I loved this company. I would have stayed there a really long time, and I was very successful. My layoff had nothing to do with my performance. The best advice I can give people is like, you're allowed to feel emotions. And this comes in whether it's a layoff, your job search, everything else. This is something I focus a ton with because people are scared to talk about like the emotional toll of this stuff. Let yourself get down. Let yourself feel the punch in your gut that was. It is okay. Toxic positivity is not beneficial to anybody. You got laid off and it broke your heart. I'm sorry. You got laid off and you don't care because you care about the company. Great. Like you're in a different position. Like everyone's a little bit different here. But like you are allowed to be down. And it's the same with the job search and everything else. Understand a lot of people don't know how to handle helping you through a layoff too. So you'll hear a ton of people just say things like, it's probably for the best. I'm sure you'll land somewhere quick and all this thing. And it makes this pressure on you feel like, okay, like it's going to be okay. I'm just going to jump forward. Like for a lot of people, it's not. A lot of people in this market are spending 8-10 months laid off and really struggling in this job market. So you have to just sort of accept the reality of this and like let yourself feel it, let yourself grieve, let yourself get over it in the way that you need to. Take the time to understand it's not a personal attack on you, and allow yourself to go through the ups and downs. Get onto the job market, see what's out there, start doing the things, but like take the time to be ready first. When I first got laid off in November, I was just like, first time it ever happened to me, dove right back in, post up on LinkedIn, sending an application, sending resumes, and I wasn't ready. I didn't put the time into my resume right. I didn't make the most out of this sort of opportunity to kind of like reach out to people and do these things. And then as interviews came, I was still talking a little bit bitter about it all. Like I was still sort of feeling hurt, and you could tell. You need to accept the human element of a layoff and not just put it into the function of like, this happened at work and this is a work thing, because it wasn't.
Right. Good stuff, Mike. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
So everyone out there, I hope this helped. Your strategies when looking for a job, some do's and don'ts. And Mike, you're awesome.
Yeah, I appreciate the time. You all can find me on TikTok and everything else. Continue to just give a lot of job search tips.
All right, I will list your stuff in
Perfect.
our hang tight, Mike.